Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by the JeopardyFan.com. I am Andy Saunders, and once again, for the 47th time, I will be hosting tonight's panel discussion. I have a Jeopardy pen in my hand.
And I do too.
Yes, you do.
In case you haven't watched lately, my audition took place this past Wednesday in Kansas City. Also on our panel tonight, a few other people who auditioned in Kansas City. David Kendall. What happened to your video, Dave?
I'm still here.
You're still here. There we go. Now you're on our video. Perfect. Okay, great. He auditioned on Tuesday morning. Also auditioning from us for Sports Jeopardy, Ben Wiles. Thanks for joining us tonight. We also have returning to our panel the Dark Lord, Darren Harris Fain, as well as Kea Chua. Thank you for joining us both. And joining our panel for the first time, a former Jeopardy champion himself and 500 Questions alumni, Marin Etobari. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Normally we start with the non-Jeopardy stuff first, so that means we go right into 500 questions once again. Marin, you had quite a, I guess you could say quite a game with Adam Villani, two Jeopardy alums, playing against each other. What was it like? What was it like being on stage for 500 questions?
It was something else. I mean, obviously it's a show that's, it's in its first season there, so they're still very much finding their feet. So there were perhaps a bit more in the way of kinks, which, coming from my only other experience on the game show was Jeopardy, of course, and that was such a well-oiled machine that, the number of breaks that we had was something that definitely added to the stress and the anxiety of the situation, being on 500 questions, but it was fun. I mean, obviously it didn't turn out as well as I would have liked because I wasn't able to unseat Adam. But that's kind of it's a different scenario, and it's frustrating, but at the same time it's liberating because you know that you can only do so much, so you're just really rooting against somebody else. So it's one of those shows that gives you the opportunity to just wish for someone else's failure and not your own success, because your own success as a challenger can only do so much, and if your opponent, and Adam is a great opponent, and he was able to clear the board each time I put a wrong on his board, so it's just hoping for him to fail, despite the fact that he is a great guy and a great champion. So that was the main takeaway, is that it's just such a different type of environment where you're waiting for the chance. Even when you're on the show, you're really waiting for your chance. Whereas, it's not a completely even playing field like in Jeopardy. So.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if anyone's listening on our YouTube broadcast, you can always send questions to the panel using hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel on Twitter. I do keep an eye on that as we go through. A question for you as well, I guess, to interrupt. Adam, much like another member of our panel, I believe, went up against Ken Jennings.
Yes, he did.
How well do you think he would have done on Jeopardy had he not played against Ken?
I think he would have done pretty well. I mean, I think that in many ways, I guess it's just a rough estimate, but based on the fact that we went basically 50-50 head-to-head on those challenge questions, and the way he, just watching him in the audience, seeing how he, what he was able to answer, what he wasn't able to answer, and he was able to answer a lot more than he couldn't. And also looking at his stats and some online stuff like Lena Big, I think that he's a pretty formidable competitor, and I think he's, at least my equal, I would say. And if I was able to win 5, I think he could probably do a similar run out there. And I wouldn't be shocked if he hadn't had the notoriously bad luck of going up against Ken Jennings, that he could be a serious Tournament of Champions challenger.
But I also just think that goes to show how fickle the Jeopardy game can be sometimes.
If I can add something on Adam,
Yes.
Had Ken not been there, Adam and I shared a green room at Jeopardy, and so Adam would have been. I would have been in his fourth game, and I have no doubt in my mind that Adam would have been in the Tournament of Champions if Ken hadn't been there. He was that good.
Yeah, I would be shocked if I mean, obviously there's so much that can happen, luck of the draw, categories, wagering, and Final Jeopardy and all that. But he's up there with some of the top competitors you'll see. So he's definitely a Tournament of Champions level player. And I'm glad for him that he got the chance to get a big payday as he deserved.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess I can ask, what changes would you make to 500 questions for next season if you had that opportunity?
Of course, let me just make sure I don't run afoul with any contracts here. But I would say that, I mean, I went in there knowing that there's a lot of things have to kind of go your way as a challenger for you to have a big impact on the game. And I think that's one of the main drawbacks, is that there's very little opportunity. You kind of have to hope for things to come your way, and there's a lot has to happen for you to come away with money. So I think something that enables perhaps more direct head-to-head competition beyond just the small number of battle questions that they have on the show would be nice, and perhaps an opportunity for at the very least the challengers to earn some cash in those battles would be nice. But I guess I say that for my own perspective. It would have been nice to go home with some cash in my hand. But I think the ability for the challenger to perhaps inflict a little bit more damage, possibly by letting the kind of get. I know that some people have talked about giving the challengers the opportunity to really get something by knowing answers that the contestant can't get. To answer a question on the rebound and either get some cash for it or bring the main contestant closer to getting knocked off. Would be nice. And also perhaps, I don't know, maybe even moving up the ability for the challenger to choose the contestant's category to maybe whenever they get any question wrong, I think would be useful. I think the calibration, if you ask me, was a little bit off. Given the caliber of players who were there, who were all phenomenal, I didn't want to go up against any of them. Those questions were, while some of them were very tough, the caliber of players was just at such a level that you needed to I think, potentially throw more roadblocks in the way, either through more challenger involvement or just the ability to have a higher penalty for each question that was answered incorrectly.
Now I'm going to open the same question up to the rest of the panel. Anything that you would change that Marin hasn't mentioned?
Just whatever they can do to improve the pace of the game.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think to speak more on that, I think they were more concerned with getting Richard Quest to speak as much as he can and show off, and that was taking away from the trivia. I mean, on Jeopardy, Alex Trebek knows that people are there to watch the trivia, not him. And the people at 500 Questions really needed to recognize that they were making way too much insignificant banter in there. I mean, some of the banter was good, especially like when Megan Barnes was on. She had some excellent stuff in there that I wouldn't want to cut. A lot of it was at the sacrifice of the trivia.
Yeah, the show seemed to be somewhere in the middle. It seemed to try to find a balance between the fast-paced quiz show, like the Jeopardy type of thing where it's really about the trivia, and the entertainment side. And I don't know, it just seemed like they didn't hit either side. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the pace was something that we definitely felt, those of us who were in the green room section of the audience, basically, just sitting there waiting for our chance, and the waiting was a little, as I'm sure you would guess, it was a little excruciating sometimes when the pace was going fairly slowly. Obviously, they edited a lot of the banter down, but there was even more waiting from our vantage point there. So there was that was actually one of the aspects that made it so different from Jeopardy. Yes, in Jeopardy, you're waiting for your name to be called, but you know that at some point over the course of your taping period, your name's going to get called, and you kind of know the times when it's going to be. It's going to be right after an episode's done taping. Here, you had no idea, and the longer things dragged on and the fewer people got eliminated, you keep wondering, am I actually going to get a chance to be on there? And, finally my name was called in the second to last challenger spot, but, I was very close to kind of going home without even the opportunity to be on the show. So that pace was was something that we all felt.
How many people were left uncalled?
I'm not sure the exact number. Well, actually, it was. I mean, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, but I'll just say it was a significant number.
Okay.
And don't forget, there were some people too that played but didn't get it aired too, from what I heard.
There was. I believe there was one player who only one. Yeah, there was only one.
Oh, I thought there was a couple.
Yeah, only one was cut out entirely, but there was some gameplay that wasn't showed. Yeah.
So that they can make more banter, sure.
I guess so. Although, I guess there was some. There may have been some technical, issues. In the early taping, they had to work through more kinks, and I think it would have been harder to edit that into real footage that was going to air. So unfortunately, one of the competitors did get cut.
And that's different from my experience on Millionaire back in 2000. It took 2.5 hours to tape my episode, but of course they cut it down to about 40 minutes, so it seemed like it moved along, even though it dragged in the studio.
Yeah. No, I think we had a situation where, I can understand for the people who are more fans of Jeopardy and similar games, and for all of you on this panel, the pace was not what we're used to and not what we usually look for. We want, once a question's done, you can have a reaction of some sort, but then you want to go right into the next question. And this show was, while the pace did speed up significantly between taping and airing, it's still not near the level of speed that Jeopardy has. And for some of us who are more question-oriented people, that could be a little suboptimal for our viewing. But everyone's got their own preferences, and I think they were trying to go for make it a more personality-based show rather than solely a trivial one.
Do you think maybe it was a deal of them biting off more than they could chew? Because I could tell they wanted to have a lot of trivia. They wanted to have really good players. They wanted to have really big personalities. They wanted to have banter with the host, and that maybe they just swung for too far a fence, and that like the question count. I think I saw a website they only aired 379 out of 500 questions.
Exactly. So
did maybe they just try to do too much?
I wonder. I think that they may have. It's the first season of the show. I'm not sure if they were exactly how they wanted to have it. Even when we were there, not everything was finalized until really the first day of taping in terms of all of the rules that we'd be playing with.
Well, maybe they didn't want to air all the questions to save them money.
I guess so, but you'd think that that should be a relatively small part of the budget of a network primetime show.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that it's significantly less than you would normally, than Jeopardy would normally give out in that amount of airtime, because it was altogether 9 hours, I believe. So if you go down to 18 hours, 18 episodes of Jeopardy, you'd probably expect to give out them to give out, more than significantly more than the 200. Probably much more than the 200,000 or so that was given out.
18 episodes of Jeopardy. Nick Condon and I, a few years ago, determined that the average amount of a win on Jeopardy was $20,000.
Yeah, so there
20,000 plus 2,000 for second, 1,000 for third. Let's just break the calculator out. 18 times 23,000 is $414,000 in prizes. So
there you go. So yeah, there wasn't a huge amount of money given out, but I think that I think they were maybe trying to do it all. They did want it personality driven, and they did want great contestants. When I got there to the green room and I saw who was there, I was rather taken aback and not in a very positive way, thinking about my chances there. And some of the unaired contestants you know, were really stellar, and I'm sure there's names that people out here would know. Um, but so as not to compromise their chances of being on if there's when there's a second season, which I've heard that they're planning to do. I will not mention their names, but they are certainly at the level and potentially above some everyone you saw on the show there. And but when you do that, of course, it becomes very difficult to think, to I guess calibrate the level of questions to still make it kind of palatable to a wide audience and still make it personality driven. And I think maybe they thought there would be a lot more elimination than there was. But with that caliber of player, there was not going to be, it was not, people weren't going to get knocked out that frequently. So maybe that's something to be readjusted in the future. Every show has to take its time and find its sweet spot.
Well, I think it's time to move on to some more Jeopardy talk. I think it's a good time to talk about This Week in Jeopardy history. And in fact, July 5th, 2005, 10 years ago today, was the first game of a man who won 19 games on the program, David Madden. What makes his inaugural appearance so interesting was the fact that his first game, if you go back to the J archive from July 5th, 2005, one thing we noticed when we put the game into the archive the first time, all but 2 responses and a few category names, 7 letters in length, was a huge theme board, made for some really unusual answers, actually, and I would almost say that David was very lucky to, in fact, escape his first game because there was such a difficult theme to figure out.
Did they actually acknowledge that theme at all in the
No,
episode?
they didn't acknowledge the theme at all. We just happened to figure it out. I think basically we figured it out when we put it into the archive. Wait a second, these answer lines are all the same, and all the same length. And interesting.
That's probably why those other 2 got slipped by, because they were probably acceptable answers, but not 7 letters long. And since the 7 letters was an unmentioned rule, they were accepted. I'm guessing. I didn't really look at that game,
But I know they say one was, looking back, the 2 was a tire pressure gauge, which you could say is TP gauge for 7 letters. The only other one, it was a question about the Baha'i faith, and I can't figure out how you could get Baha'i out of 7 letters. But the reason why I kind of brought that up is, how do we feel, when themes come up on Jeopardy? Big theme, large themes, not just a couple of categories here and there.
Well, if you know about the theme, that's something else. I mean, as we mentioned, this 7-letter thing was completely unknown to everybody as far as we know. When I play the game at home, I like having the theme categories, the crossword clues P or whatever ends in ing, because I always find that it helps get the question a lot more, and it nails it down. So if I know that it's going to be 7 letters, it's a good help for me, anyways.
What about the rest of you?
I think if they're relying on the contestants to figure out the theme for themselves, they may be asking a bit much. Because speaking of when you're playing along at home, I know I get so zoned in on the category and clue in front of me that oftentimes I forget what was just there or to pay attention to what's about to come. And it's just maybe the way my mind works, but but noticing even similarities from one clue to the next is something that if they're expecting me to notice that in the flow of a game, I think in my case is highly unlikely.
I agree with that, and especially when you're playing at the studio when time seems to go twice as fast. I'm just lucky to understand what the category is and what the question is asking for.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's so all-encompassing as every answer having 7 letters is something that I can't imagine any contestant would be ready to be thinking about. I mean, you're just here, your adrenaline's going, and you're just thinking in the moment about each clue at a time. It's really hard to contextualize it and think about hidden similarities there. And although just to think about it, I just realized that another alternate and acceptable answer would be Baha'ism for the Baha'i faith, which would be 7 letters.
That would complete the board. That would complete the board. So, perfect. 10 years later, we finally figured out the secret.
Maybe it takes an Iranian. I don't know.
I feel as though I should use my admin access on the archive just to throw in Baha'ism, just to.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check and make sure that I'm not making up that that's an alternate word. But yeah, it's in fact the Encyclopedia Iranica, which is a great work of all things Iranian. Actually, the article title is Baha'ism. And yeah, I'm not going to argue with Dr. Yarshater of Columbia, the esteemed director of that encyclopedia. So if he calls it that, I'm sure it's acceptable.
Okay, so there is your 61st 7-letter answer, Baha'ism.
It's like completing a crossword puzzle 10 years late.
Hey, it's not going to get you many points in the tournament, but it still counts.
But it gives you a good feeling of satisfaction.
So moving on, I guess, to this week from Jeopardy. A few things. I know we were talking before we went live about the Sao Tome category on Monday. That was I would say that was fun, and as we mentioned, I guess one of the reasons why you have to expect anything when you go on the program. But for those of you who saw Monday's episode, what did you all think of the Sao Tome and Principe category, and how did you do on it?
As a geography nerd, I loved it. It was an obscure country that nobody outside geography nerds have heard of, so right away that appealed to me. And it was just tough enough to be Jeopardy worthy. I was mentioning before we went on when we were talking about the category that I got only 3 out of 5 on it. I missed the Coco one, and that was again something that another thing I wanted to bring up about it, that a lot of those clues, or almost all the clues, didn't need knowledge of Sao Tome and Principe. That Coco one didn't need that at all, and that was one of the ones that I missed.
Yeah, a few of them did have some good tease-out metrics that even if you went in cold, you could figure out some of the categories, which I did. I didn't run the category, but I got 3 or so.
Yeah, yes. Jeopardy is really good at adding those tease-out metrics.
I should point out, though, that in the audition, they really don't say tease-out metric. They say clues within the clues. That was one thing that
I like our terminology better.
I like it too, but I felt that it was inappropriate to comment during the audition.
No, actually, us fans call it teaser metrics. Yeah.
How to not get on the show after an audition.
Yeah,
exactly. After Sao Tome, do we think we have any other possible, I guess, teachable moments for people who are still, haven't been on the show and are trying to get on the show? Things that this week could teach them about maybe things to look at.
I was let's see, there was some interesting, I suppose. Yes, I think at the end of that first game, I felt really, I don't know, sad for Amanda, who was coming on strong at the end of Double Jeopardy, and ended up getting the last clue of Double Jeopardy, but she was behind by a significant amount, and she got the last one, which I think she could selected a 1200, but there was still a 1600 and 2000 left on the board, which ended up untouched because they ran out of time. And choosing that 1200, it seemed, given the fact that she didn't know it was going to be the last question, but she, I guess, could have potentially guessed that it might be. I was, yelling at the TV for her to go down to, the $2,000 clue or the $1,600 clue, something that would give her a chance to avoid it being a lock game. So that kind of late game, positioning yourself for Final Jeopardy strategy, I think was potentially a teachable moment there. And she was a great, clearly had a lot of knowledge and was coming on strong at the end. But if she had potentially chosen and gotten right a $2,000 clue, then she would have been right in there for and having a chance in Final Jeopardy.
I think, though, a lot of the some of the blame on that has to do with the show itself. From what I understand, they always tell people work from the top down and play the game that way, and that's just ingrained in. From what I understand, it's ingrained into your mind in the green room, and they don't really think of the best advantageous way to play in that way because, oh, no, I'm supposed to play top down even though going at the bottom down when there's only a minute left might get me more points.
You know what they also ingrain into you, apparently?
What?
Especially from the audition forward? Select your clues quickly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you select your clues quickly, if you select your clues quickly, then it's not a problem because you see all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Well, David is right, but I also remembered, I don't know if Maggie said it in the green room or somebody said it on stage, but I remember somebody telling us, if Alex says a minute to go, head for the bottom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in the green room, they told us that when the game is getting late and there's still a daily double on the board, to look for it. Now, I mean, I do that anyway, but that's what they told you.
yeah.
Yeah, it's Jeopardy is a free country. You can do what you want to, especially when you really need the money towards the end.
Yeah.
It was sad to see the game end like that. Well, not sad for the champion, who was I guess it was Brandon that day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that raises the question I wanted to pose to Marin, especially since you've had a multi-day run, but those of you who have too. There seems to be you're talking about having a certain situational awareness when you're in the middle of the game, and I wonder for a lot of contestants if anything beyond category and clue is brain space maybe they don't have in that moment, and thinking strategically and being aware of time and score might be more than a lot of contestants may even be capable of, let alone thinking about and doing something on purpose with.
Well, as a matter of fact, Keith Williams, after my first game, dinged me for the daily double I hit toward the end of the game for not going for the lock right then and there. And looking back at that, I understand perfectly what he was saying, but you're right. In the moment, I wasn't thinking that clearly.
Yeah,
it's the sort of thing. Oh, yeah. It's the sort of thing that you're not going to know it unless you prepare ahead of time, like through practice games or like when you're watching, just saying, "Oh, I would go low, I would go low,"
Yeah.
sort of playing along. Yeah, it's too hard to develop like on the fly.
Right, and it's hard to, especially when it takes a second to think about that wagering strategy or whatever. It's you don't want to be the person who holds up the show. I think a lot of us are kind of polite and we don't want everyone to hate us, so we don't want to make Alex prompt us angrily that we're taking too long thinking about our wagering of what it would take to go for a lock game, the pros and cons of that. So, I mean, especially when I ended up losing in my basically I feel like that situational awareness kind of, for me, I had more practice in earlier games. My mental capacity, I think, started to decrease as I went on, and I ended up losing in a match that was my fourth taping of that day, and I think my mental stamina was starting to fade at that point, and I made kind of an improper. If I recall, I made a few of those kind of stupid situational mistakes, and then I made a poor wager in going into Final Jeopardy that, if I had altered, which I realized it, but they told me it was too late because I'd already written me down on the paper. If I had realized it, I would have actually ended up winning that match. But that situational awareness is something that, if you're panicking and trying to just face every clue, or if you're kind of tired, because it is a draining experience for sure, it can easily slip away from you.
Now, speaking of Keith dinging people, being that it was the July 1st game, and I just got a chance to really watch those games today, did Keith have anything to say about Alex's wager at the end of Double Jeopardy on Wednesday?
I believe he did.
Okay, I'm sure his comments were not were not on the pleasant side.
He may have had a glass in hand.
Okay.
I think I haven't had a chance to watch Keith's videos yet either, because I just got caught up. But I do recall seeing on Facebook him mentioning I shouldn't watch at the gym anymore, and I think that was on Wednesday.
Yes, normally I am the one who ends up prompting him on those things, but of course I had better things to do on Wednesday. And before I get to how I spent my Wednesday, I will speak about one more thing I want to say. Being Canadian, the players went 1 for 6 this week on Final Jeopardies that had something to do with Canada. And here's a tip: learn Canada.
You were mentioning before, is there any teachable moments from this week for people who want to get on the show? Learn your Canada stuff. There's another one.
Yeah.
Learn Canada.
Yeah, that was huge for me. There was actually a Canadian cities, I think, category when I was on there too. So it's always
and
good.
how did you do, man?
I need to look up and see. I don't think I did terribly, but you know what? It's been so long, I can't quite remember. Here we go. Let me look at, talk amongst yourselves, but.
There was a Canadian cities category a couple weeks ago, wasn't there?
The one that went viral.
Blown up, yeah.
Yeah,
Moose Jaw and
Yes, I had one friend who lives in Edmonton actually invite me to the city to watch the Swans. So, but yes, that went viral up in this country, and now I think it's time for Marin looks up to see how well he did in Canadian cities. I think it's time for a few of us to talk about our audition experience. And David, actually Ben, you went first. You had a Sports Jeopardy audition on the weekend. How was Kansas City for you?
Kansas City was a fun visit. Given my occupation, it was more of a quick in and out than I would have liked. But on the whole, it was a nice place to go. I will warn another one of those teachable moments. When you're nervous, especially, and you've been traveling and you've got to drive ahead of you, Kansas City barbecue is delicious, but it is best eased into.
Yeah, I definitely did not. Personally, I did not eat Kansas City barbecue the day of my audition.
Yes, I had the sense to wait until after my audition, but I didn't have the sense to realize I had a 6-hour drive ahead of me right after Kansas City barbecue. So it was more of an eventful drive home than I would have otherwise wanted. And we'll leave it at that for fear there might be children watching.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let's put it this way. I know. My own brain was fried on Wednesday, but after my audition. But David and his wife and Jeannie went for Kansas City barbecue, and I know Jeannie had a long drive ahead of her. So.
So did we.
Well,
my wife, me, and Jeannie.
Jeannie left before you did, so I think
true.
her experience might
The hard drive wasn't until the next day, yeah.
Yeah, I'm worried. I feel as though I should ask her at some point if her experience mirrored Ben's. But, maybe she's more used to it. I'm not sure. But no, I would say, well, yeah. So, how was the audition itself, other than Kansas City Barbecue, Ben?
The audition itself was it was different from what I remember a regular Jeopardy audition being. My only regular audition was in Nashville in 2004. So, granted, a lot can change in 11 years. But the atmosphere of the audition, it was very much a raucous sports bar type, more of a sports bar type atmosphere than what you would, I suppose, ordinarily see at a Jeopardy audition.
Anything with Maggie is raucous, though.
Point, yes. But the test was shorter. There were only 30 questions instead of the 50. Otherwise, the format was pretty much what you'd expect. You fill out the interview papers, you play the mock game, you do the chat, and then you sit down. But I think the big difference was in sort of the vibe and the atmosphere. You could tell they were trying to create a different feel for Sports Jeopardy than they are for regular Jeopardy.
That's good to know. I know from what I saw on Facebook, Sue Herder. I don't know if she was in your group, Ben. Was she?
She was in my group, yes.
Oh, so you could speak. Actually, I'll let you speak to how she taunted the Michigan fans.
Yes, she went to grad school at the University of North Carolina, and there were probably 4 or 5 people out of the 18 in the room who admitted to being Michigan Wolverine fans. And so she, of course, during her visit, to all the Michigan fans in the room, time out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too soon. 21 years, I'm sure, is too soon.
See, to me, that's the kind of thing that would endear oneself to the contestant coordinators and be the kind of thing that I was like, if I saw somebody do that, I feel as though they almost might be a shoo-in for the call.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah. If I were guessing, of the 18 people in the room, I would guess she would be the most likely out of all of us to get called. Not just from demographics or in terms of gameplay, even though she is solidly hitting the mark on both categories, but also just personality-wise. She seemed to have a really firm handle on what they were looking for and being that.
What I loved about the Sports Jeopardy audition, and I auditioned, I think, last summer at some point in New York, was just like how different the contestant pool was. I mean, yes, there's a significant amount of overlap between the people I would see there and the people I would see at a normal Jeopardy audition, but there was, like, when it came down to like talking about yourself and your hobbies and all of that, I definitely didn't hear I'm the manager of a New Jersey strip club in my regular Jeopardy audition from a fellow contestant, but that definitely happened in the Sports Jeopardy audition.
I would also think, too, that at a Sports Jeopardy audition, and Ben kind of alluded to this, that there's a lot less females there. I remember at my regular Jeopardy audition this week, it seemed to be more than 50% female, and I'm thinking that they might have given more females the email because they want to up the female presence in regular Jeopardy, but also for Sports Jeopardy. Do you know how many of the 18 were female, Ben?
In my group of the 18 that were there, we had 2.
2, yeah. But so I think that, as you mentioned, that's another thing in Sue Herder's favor is being female at a Sports Jeopardy thing, but also that seems to be something that they want on the regular show too, which is why I think that there was more females in my regular Jeopardy audition group.
Yeah, the gender imbalance was definitely notable when I tried out for Sports Jeopardy, and among those of us who made it to the mock version, I think there were maybe 15 or 18 people, and all male. Every single one male, which is, yeah.
And you see that in the casting so far of season 1. I think they've had 2 females on the show so far, and I think there was a mention that Cora Peck was going to be on at some point. So that's 3 that we know of. There may be more than that down the road, but the gender balance seems to be pretty heavily skewed male.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of those women, Kate Waits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had her on a panel right after her Sports Jeopardy episode aired. David, so yeah, you went Tuesday. Do you have anything you want to add about your experience?
Well, it was pretty much what I expected. If you're in the Jeopardy community, which I know everybody on the panel and probably a lot of the people listening are, it's pretty much what I expected. They had the pictures with Maggie. I actually got in just under the wire through a bunch of mishaps that I should have got there earlier, but I just got there maybe about 5 minutes before 9 o'clock, so hopefully that didn't work against me. But got my picture taken by Maggie. They divided the group up into 2 and did the 50-question test, and the audition I think went well. I answered in the form of a question. I didn't need to be told to speak up. I rang in lots. I got called on lots, too, in my mock game. I did a lot less pausing than I'm doing right now. I called the next category after I answered. So there was a lot of people from all over, but they did seem to like the fact that I drove 14 hours to get there. So Winnipeg to Kansas City was a big drive. So I think the next closest to me was Minnesota, and there's a few people from the Midwest there, but nobody overly far away. And yeah, I guess it was pretty much what I expected it to be, and hopefully my audition went well.
Okay. Actually, that brings up one point I wanted to ask, especially Kea and Darren, at your auditions, when you recently auditioned, did they split the audition group up into 2 groups and have 2 different rooms going, or was it everyone in one room?
I think it was only one group for ours, but it was the Los Angeles audition, so I think they had multiple days. I think that's what they did.
And my last audition was in Memphis, and they pretty much had us one group at a time.
Okay. I wonder if that's a new thing they're doing now, to have 2, a holding room where they split up the group into 2 and send, one group in with one set of contestant coordinators and a second group in with a second set of contestant coordinators, and it means that they're able to look at more people at once.
I will also add to anybody listening who hasn't been to an audition and that has probably heard about Maggie. She's all that you've ever heard about. My wife was coming to get me afterwards, and she even could hear Maggie out there. And once we got back home and we were telling friends about the experience, my wife always noticed me, "Oh, you got to tell them about Maggie," even though she's seen her for a minute, maybe that, just from standing outside in the hall. So yeah, Maggie is really something. If you haven't met her, unfortunately, my group was the one. Well, not unfortunately, but my group was the one without Maggie in the training in the mock game area. But I got Karina and Glenn, but whoever they are, whether it's Karina, Glenn, Maggie, Robert, whoever they are, the contestant coordinators are just fabulous at really making you feel comfortable at auditioning for Jeopardy and making you the best that you could be. And to be honest, if you still can't be Jeopardy material after being worked over by Maggie and Karina and Glenn and Robert and all those wonderful people, then yeah, this just isn't your year for the show. Those contestant coordinators really do a good job of making you Jeopardy ready just at the audition.
Is Robert back, by the way?
I'm not sure. I didn't
I
see him.
didn't see him. Yeah, I didn't see him at Kansas City, and neither did Andy.
Okay.
My group had we had Karina and Glenn as well, and I thought Glenn I thought Glenn and I hit it off pretty well in the interview portion of ours. So I was very happy with how my audition went. Happy with my test. Happy with everything. I made one joke because I was the last group to come up, and throughout the first 5, there was one category that was, the 600, the bottom clue in the category was just sitting there and nobody was touching it, and I'm like, that clue looks lonely. I'll take that for 600, and I thought that that might go. People seem to laugh a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think that shows, and you can always tell when the contesting coordinators see something they like, and a little bit of affability always goes a long way. I mean, it's tough, and I was beginning to think I could do nothing that they would like because, I mean, my first 3 times trying out and not doing the audition, always passing the test, but not getting the call were for the teen tournament. Then it was my second audition for the regular show that I finally got called, and that was 8 months after my original audition too. So I thought that I was never doing anything right, but I guess all the times that they said they liked what I was doing, I guess they weren't lying. So if they like you're joking about the lonely clue, that can only be a good thing.
And one other thing I noticed, and one thing I was actually quite happy with from one of the other people at the audition, was that they were like, afterwards, let's take a group picture. So as you can see by my screen share there, we managed to get a group shot of most of the people, if not all the people, who were in my audition group there. So I was quite happy with that. That made it on Twitter. I retweeted it. So.
Oh, I would love to have that for mine.
So I am very thankful that that was an idea, and maybe Karina picked up on that from the suggester. But that's quite a memento I now have of the experience. And so, if anyone from my group eventually tunes into this panel and sees the picture, I apologize in advance for posting it, but I think it's a good thing to have shared with you guys. So.
I'm glad you did, Andy. I kind of wish that they did that for me because I'm already trying to remember some of the people from my group, and I was thinking, oh, geez, if I'm watching the show, am I going to remember if they were in my group or not? 'Cause now, every time I hear somebody on the show from the Midwest, I'm going to think, is it my group or not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if I recall, I always remembered when I saw people I auditioned with who were on the show, and I would just think, oh, they picked them over me. I just fuel the competitive desire. That's all it was. So let me do that for you.
I mean, I have my own hopes that, but I'm like David. I'm glad that there's a picture because now I can kind of compare, just in case I forget. Because it did go by like a bit of a blur at spots. So.
Oh, it did. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm at the point of the broadcast, actually, at this point. Do any panelists have any questions for any other panelists at this point?
I have a question for Kea.
Yes.
I was really impressed with your game and was really rooting for you during that game. I just thought that you were such an impressive, aggressive player. I mean that in a good way. But could you talk about the strategy you went into that game with?
As far as clue selection or the
Yes.
daily double? Well, clues. As far as clue selections go, I always would go for the 4th row, just because it's the standard. If you look at the J archive, that's where the daily doubles are the most often. And my philosophy is just, I think the daily double is worth it even if you get it early, because at the very least, that means the other 2 contestants don't get it at some point later. So I always go for the 4th row first, and then I would always do 3rd row and then 5th row. But if it's a category that tends to be more academic, like lit or history, I would usually just go after the third and fifth row first for that category, and then keep doing that for the other more academic categories, and I'd leave pop music to the end. But yeah. As far as the daily doubles go, I was going for the lock, or a high likelihood of a lock going into Final Jeopardy. Yeah.
And obviously, unfortunately, it just didn't work out in the one case. So it's as I have said many times, Jeopardy is a very fickle game. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I've heard that one of the main thing that makes Jeopardy such a variable game is the buzzer too. From everybody that I've come across, they say the buzzer is a very hard thing to master as well, and that's always where the returning champion has a big advantage.
Usually, but this is my first appearance here since I lost to Brennan Bushy, and he was lightning fast, and Amy was also very fast as well. You know, I had locks for all three of my games, so obviously I did okay on the buzzer for those 3 games, but they just blew me away when it came to speed, I'm afraid. And in the slim, unlikely event I get to go back for the tournament, I'll have to rethink my buzzer strategy.
When I was preparing, pretty much from the moment I got the email for the audition, I just started when I watched Jeopardy at home, I would just hold a clicky pen in my hand, and just try to buzz in and time it to Alex when Alex finished the clue.
Probably why they give us C's at the audition.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
yeah. I started when I played along at home. I started answering in the form of a question. I started standing up when I watched, like, right before my audition, just to get yourself in the prep mode.
I like the fact that when I was doing my mock game at the audition, they called on me for, I think, the first 4 or 5 clues. It was just David, once after another. So I'd like to think that I got a pretty good handle. Granted, the other 2 people next to me were just as new on the buzzer as me. Like, I didn't have to face a returning champion or anything. But I'd like to think that the fact that I got the first 4 or 5 clues in first, that meant that I got a pretty good handle on the buzzer too. So
I wonder if it was because your opponents simply weren't ringing in, because they as far as I can tell, they want to see everyone, give answers and call for clues. So there's no real.
That's probably
there's no real first at the audition, from what I've always thought. They just want to see everyone. They'll just call on people randomly as long as they've rung in, and so.
But you can leave me to my delusion.
Hey, if you're the only one getting them right, that's also something in your favor, though. So.
Yeah. Although my wife likes to remind me that I got 2 geography questions wrong in my mock game, and geography is a strong suit of mine, so she's never letting me live that one down.
It happens. I was disappointed to get that Yukon question wrong this week. Despite me claiming that geography is what I live for.
Well, for a Canadian, that Final Jeopardy on Friday was very easy. But
I would have said Yukon.
Also,
well, I thought about Klondike, but thought no. I'm not confident that that's actually a river. But that's what a dumb Yank will say.
Mm-hmm.
But Andy, you were saying that it was easy for a Canadian, and a lot of the Canadian ones are easy for us and incredibly difficult for them. So hopefully they have a Canadian category when either of us are on the show.
And I can now say I got 3 of the 5 Canadian cities in my game, so I'll take that. I got what did I get? I got yes. I got I mean, sticking to that same region, I got Yellowknife, Regina, Quebec City, and I got beaten to the buzzer on Charlottetown, though I knew that, and then Banff was a triple stumper, which I could have guessed, but I wasn't sure about. So I'll take
Okay, teachable moment for the Americans. Banff is a resort town in Alberta. It's our first national park in Canada, kind of like your Yellowstone. And it's, yes, very
Lake
big
Louise
tourist
is in
area.
Banff too, isn't it?
Pardon me, sorry?
Lake Louise is in Banff too, isn't it?
It's in the general vicinity of Banff,
I
not
thought
quite
it was-
within, or not quite within the town, but maybe within the national park area. But
It's very pretty if you ever come up to Canada. Have a gander at Banff.
I hear great things. I've known of people going on honeymoons up there, so sounds like it's worth a visit.
yes,
And it
sorry,
would have
Lake
been worth-
Louise is, sorry, David is right. Lake Louise is within Banff National Park.
And that was a game I lost, so it would have been worth me getting those $2,000 also.
I think the first time I ever heard of Banff was when I was like 7 or 8 watching Press Your Luck. And I think there was a trip to Banff is one of the things that somebody landed on. So I was like, oh, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life.
You're a game show geek since you were little too.
Oh, God, yeah. Have to admit it, yeah.
You get a lot of us like that, yeah.
Hey.
You
Whatever
have found
works.
your tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do I have any other questions from anyone else on the panel? The hashtag does not have anything at this point. Let's see. Oh, yes, I saw that one. Oh, yeah, you just missed the end of last week's with your comments on Kansas City barbecue, Ben. But
Yeah.
we were definitely lamenting it after I logged off last week. But okay, well, in that case, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on our panel this evening. Yes, so to Ben, best of luck with Sports Jeopardy. To David,
Thank you.
best of luck with getting the actual call for regular Jeopardy.
You too,
Also,
Andy. You really deserve that, and from everything I've heard from yours, it sounds like call is definitely in your future too.
Well, I will cross my fingers. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. But I'm certainly hoping. And also to Darren, Marin, and Kea. Thank you guys for joining us on the panel this evening, and for those of you tuning in eventually on YouTube, thanks for sticking with us this evening on Jeopardy Live panel. Let's get the credits card up. It looks like it is all good already this time. Not no scramble around to get the credits together as I did last week. So thank you all for tuning in to Jeopardy Live panel. I am Andy Saunders. Have a good night.